Have you ever wondered what that sound is that radio has? It has its own unique sound. It's very, very particular. Have you ever wondered what the secret sauce is or what the secret box is? There's been something going on that you may not be aware of called the loudness wars, and music has been the collateral damage. But what am I talking about? The secret of radio. Well, that secret that radio has is You've grown up listening to radio. You know what I'm talking about, that sound that it has, that loud, that punchy, that bassy sound that radio has and has had for a very long time. Well, there's a technical reason for that sound, so let's cover some of that first. It's, again, our old friend, signal to noise. Signal to noise is that you have that noise floor. So let's just talk about the audio realm because that's what we're going to be talking about. Just in the audio realm. The noise floor is... Do you hear that? Just that silent part. That is our noise floor. And the signal is my voice traveling into the microphone. That is the signal. So the more separation we can get from our signal to our noise, the quieter it's going to perceptively be, and it's going to sound a little bit more pro. So I am just talking about audio again. So we want to get our signal as far away from our noise as possible, and radio can be very noisy. So what do we use? We use all sorts of compression and limiting and automatic gain control to get that level, that sound, that signal as loud as we can away from the noise. The early days of radio had no audio processing. None at all. It was, well, let me take that back. There was audio processing, and that was the operator's hand sitting on that pot and that potentiometer, called pot in radio. When it gets quiet, they turn it up louder. When it got too loud, they turned it down. That was your audio processing. So that was manual gain control, if you will. So today we have a box that does that and a whole lot more. And it doesn't take away the responsibility of the operator from doing their job of making sure the levels are correct, but it does help, and it does kind of compensate some inattention and just some dynamic ranges in music and programming these days. So a box that we have is like this Orband Optimod 8600. This is not sponsored, so this is just one of the boxes that we have used in the past for audio processing on our stations. We have it as a backup on one of them and as the primary on another. There's other options too. There's the Omnia 11, and if you've watched any of the videos from Santiago Peak recently, you've seen that in the rack right below the transmitter. It's got that big, massive screen on there that takes up like 5 rack units. It's huge. Anyways, so that's kind of the latest, greatest, newest one. But they all do generally the same job. The audio that comes in, it goes through the automatic gain control, and AGC for short. And all that is that operator turning up and down that potentiometer, that pot. Except it's not a real person, it's a computer algorithm. So what that will do is it'll say, oh, the audio that's coming in, the programming that's coming in is too loud. Let me turn that down. Oh, the audio's too quiet. Let me turn that up. It hits a certain threshold. Oh, that's too loud. Oh, it hits below a certain threshold. Oh, that's too quiet. So again, it's just trying to keep the audio consistent for the later stages. So the next stage, the audio processor takes that audio, and we have to think of it now in the frequency domain. So you have your bass, your mids, your high mids, and your highs. And that's all the different parts of the audio spectrum. It breaks them up and sends them off to different parts. The next step is that compressor. So now it's going to take those bass, the bass frequencies, and do compression on them. It's going to take those mid frequencies and do some compression on them. Those mid highs, compression, and you can configure each of those different bands to have a certain amount of compression and to have their thresholds, or when they start taking effect, separately. Now, still in those separated bands, it moves on to the next section, which is the multiband limiter. Again, a limiter is just a really fast compressor with a really high ratio. If you've done any type of recording, any type of music, you know what a compressor is. You have a ratio of how much audio comes in to how much audio goes out. That's your ratio. And generally compressors are not really high ratios. They're like 2-to-1, 4-to-1, 5-to-1, etc., etc. But a limiter, it's a really high ratio, like 20-to-1. 20 decibels come in, 1 decibel comes out, basically, of change. And so what that will do is that will take all those peaks in the audio, in those bands, and bring them down and make them louder, basically. Then we come up to the next step, and that's going to be our mixer, and it's going to take your lows, your mids, your mid-highs, mid-highs? Your lows, your mids, your mid-highs, and your highs, and basically brings them all back together again. Now you'll have the ability to control how much of that bass and mids and how much of that you want in there. Then finally, there's one more step, and that is the overall final limiter. And again, it's that limiter that takes all the bands put back together and just make sure that there's no peaks that go above a certain level. Now, a limiter is not perfect, and there is one more step, and that's a clipper, and that's what's very unique to radio. So a clipper is literally just that. It takes those little peaks that may be going over and just cuts them off. Done. If you do that too much, do that too harshly, you'll start getting distortion on the air, and it'll sound really bad. And people don't like distortion, unless that's the way what you're trying to go for, but most people aren't trying to go for that. You kind of want clean and clear and loud. And it's like that triangle, I don't know if you've ever seen it, of good, fast, and I used to have it written up on my whiteboard. Good, fast, and cheap. And you can't have all three. So just like with your audio processor, you can't have clean, loud, and punchy. So you have trade-offs in your audio to make that sound. I've let you in. You are now part of the club. You know the secret of radio. Well, one of the many secrets of radio. This is how radio sounds so loud. And now remember, back at the beginning, I talked about the loudness wars. So back in the 80s, 90s, early 2000s, and even kind of today in some markets, there are stations trying to be louder than the others, louder than the competition. And today it's not really so much of an issue. Back when you were scanning the dial, if you came across a station that was just loud, that tended to be what people stopped on. Not so much anymore with digital tuning on your radios and things like that. You're kind of now trying to focus more on that clean but loud sound. So, but again, it's all up to the station. It's all up to what they want to do and the sound that they are looking for. But the loudness wars have kind of crept into the music industry, and now you'll hear, if you were to listen and look at music produced today, it will look like the audio that comes out of an audio processor, just completely square waves. Instead of having these nice dynamics in them, they are clipped, compressed, limited, and it looks, when you zoom out and look at the waveform, it's just one big square. So the loudness wars have crept in. There's one album that I listen to that I can hear it, and it's kind of distracting to me personally. But if that's what the artist is looking for, if that's what the producer wants, and people are buying the album, now that you know what the secret of radio is, with great power comes great responsibility. use this secret wisely. If you ever find yourself in the position of having your hand on those controls for an audio processor, use it wisely. Make your station sound good. I don't think I've done a tremendous job. Our programming is kind of all over the place from various different sources, so it's hard to dial down and make a good sound. I've tried. I think I've got a decent sound. It's not where I want it to be. And some of these guys who really are good at this, like the Kozas, you guys know who you are. You guys have a good sound to your stations. But that comes from a lot of time, a lot of patience, of minor tweak here and let it be. And just listen. Maybe a week later, another minor tweak. You guys have way more patience than I do. And I have lots of respect for that. So, with that, there's your other little tech talk for today. Probably longer than I really wanted it to be. Oh yeah, it's way longer than I expected this to be. So, we'll see you in the next video. If you enjoyed this, give it a thumbs up. If not, give it a thumbs down. Look at some of the other videos that I have. And stay safe, stay healthy. I'll see you next time.